I want to just dedicate this year to, in memory of a very close friend of mine, Shimon Demil Rafal Ben Avram Mitzvah, I believe. He was my chavrus in Eretz Yisrael. I was doing for Smicha. So that's in 79, 80. So he's an old friend. And Rahman son, he was nifter a week ago, Shabbos in Houston. He lived half the time in Eretz Yisrael, half the time in Houston with his second wife. And interesting guy. He lived in Sfat, but he went every Shabbos supposedly down to Hebron. Just a character, just a remarkable character. He had cancer before also. So anyway, so we'll try and Lili Nishmas. Okay. This week I'm starting a series at the Beit on Wednesday night. I think the title of the series is Navigating Torah in a Secular Society or Secular World. And I sort of say three topics, but I'm not leaving it to that. Freedom of religion, same-sex marriages, and reproductive rights. And the real theme of the series is going to be how you present Torah in a environment, in a world environment that is that represents a value system that's different than yours. So the point is that it's not so simple to just say I'm going to promote Torah values and just promote Torah values, because the fact is you have to see how you work within that system. So I'll just give you an example of something like this. Let me give you a fast example. I might have mentioned you guys before, but there was a case in Baltimore of a bunch of pagans who wanted to reintroduce animal sacrifice, and they ran into a little bit of a problem because of the animal cruelty laws in Maryland. So the question is, how do you relate to these? What they wanted to say, freedom of religion overrides these animal cruelty laws. What's happening is, but they're pagan, mamish ovdei avodah zarah, and that's what they were promoting. So now comes around, happens that they go to court, and my understanding is the OU, the RCA, and Aguda all intervened on behalf of the pagans. Now, don't quote me on that yet, but they all intervened on behalf of the pagans. And why? Because they want freedom of religion to override animal cruelty laws.
Right.
For very simple reasons. Right. Right, should be the shchita or mila or something like that. So that's an example of the kind of issues I'm going to be dealing with in this year. But before, that's what I'm going to deal with in the series. But I thought would be interesting in terms of the Chabura is dealing with the very concept of competing value systems. The idea that you have two systems that collide, and is there a way of perceiving that from a Torah perspective, or is the Torah in some way recognize the collision of value systems or that type of structure? And you would think that the Torah is one value system, and it basically says here's the value system, and basically just sort of says we're the right value system, every other value system is wrong. But the fact is the underlying thing is to really understand what is a value system, what really are values, what is a value system, and then how do you have it that you have these conflicting value systems, and that there's some aspect in Torah of recognizing these collisions of value systems, which change just your whole way of looking at the whole value decision making. So that entails us to look at what are values and value systems, different models for these systems and decision making, and that will lead to into the necessity of us looking at what really is what's right and what's wrong, or what really is the definition of tov and ra. Okay, what really is tov and what really is ra. Now, right off the bat, we'll start with the most obvious, and when you talk about different value systems, well, let's start with an obvious reality within the Torah realm that there are two value systems right off the bat. And those two value systems are, right off the bat, you see, in other words, we talk about this value systems, right off the bat, and this is what Kant couldn't understand about Judaism. He didn't really fully understand the problem, but he had a real problem with Judaism, because his perception was a categorical imperative, that all human beings have a shared value perception. Okay? And Judaism makes a distinction, okay, in values. He was right. But really what Judaism does is make a distinction between two distinct value systems. They are the Torah system for Jews and the Noahide code for non-Jews. And Kant, I don't know if you knew about the Noahide code or not, but Kant had a problem in terms of the Noahide code, in terms of what kind of value system that says that this is okay for Jews, but not okay. If it's a value, it's applied to everyone. Okay, a very specific idea. Judaism off the bat says there's two distinct value systems. We're going to start with that one. Okay, so the point is there's two distinct value systems, one for Jews and one for non-Jews. Right? Okay. So how do you understand it? How do you usually look at that? So give me an example of a distinction between the Noahide code and the Torah code. Simple distinction.
Keeping kosher.
Kosher, okay. So Jews are commanded to keep kosher. It is a value to keep kosher. Noahides aren't commanded to keep kosher. Let's use not eat pork, because they do have some dietary laws in terms of Eidim Minachai, in terms of the limit of the living animal. Let's look at this though. So Jews are commanded to not eat pork. Non-Jews are not commanded not eat pork. In fact, when it comes to nevela, which is a animal that is shechted improperly, right? If the Torah specifically says, give it to the ger tosha, give it to the Noahide, which means, hey, it's even a good thing for him to eat this non-kosher meat. Okay. So how do you
Except that don't a lot of non-Jews eat a lot of kosher meat as a result of Gita Nasha? Shechted kosher, but it's not the kosher part.
Well, that's true, but they don't have okay. Okay, but the fact is there's no prohibition on a non-Jew eating kosher.
Clearly.
Okay, so how do you look at that? How do you understand it? I'm projecting this two distinct value systems, a value system for Jews and a value system for non-Jews. How do you understand the distinction between those value systems? So, the simple way people mostly look at it is that the distinction is in the object or the one that the value system is talking to in terms of the person. Jews are different, that's why they have to keep kosher. Okay, so it's like it's not that there's an inherent difference in the concept of values between the two. Okay, what some people try to argue is that there's something different. Let me give you one answer. We'll take the more mystical approach in terms of this approach. That there's something different about Jews, and that's why they can't eat pork. Okay, but the point is in terms of the value consciousness, right? There's no real distinction between the two. Just that and let me give you an example. Like you might have values that part of the values is that a person is the values speak to a specific individual or specific groups of individuals, but then it looks at the individuals. If the individuals are different, then the conclusion will also be different for them as well. I'm trying to get to a distinction. Let's just use something out there of a distinction between people. Let's say people. You should not go into dogs are not allowed to go into food stores, but a blind person is allowed to bring their seeing-eye dog into the food store. Okay? So the point is a person will not say two distinct value systems in terms of this difference between blind people and and therefore a completely different value consciousness. It's saying no, we have one value. We have one value system. And in this value system, there's this idea of there's something wrong with animals being in food source. How that is balanced against another value of the perhaps a great of the seeing eye of the blind person being able to see. So therefore we say no to this person and yes to that person, but it's not that we're really projecting two distinct value systems. It's one value system that inherent in the value structure makes a distinction between people. Okay, so that's why most people understand the distinction between Jew and non-Jew vis-a-vis kashrut. The fact that you're Jewish makes it different. Okay? Now, okay, so let's go into a different definition. Let's go into another case. So that's the way it worked out with what I call ritualistic laws. Yeah.
So here's the case of the Supreme Court now having to paskin on whether a woman can wear a full niqab and cover. Did I walk in after?
No, that's fine.
Okay, but
yeah.
I mean, here's justice saying you see your accuser's face, and here is Sharia law saying she's not uncovering her face in a room full of men. And then there's everybody who's got an opinion on whether Sharia really.
So what you're getting at, see, that's a distinction in value systems, in the sense that in the let's say in the Canadian system, let's say Canadian system says she has to uncover the niqab, right? So the Canadian system would be at odds with the Muslim system, the Sharia law. That's two distinct value systems. Even if Canadian law says that she can,
that she can keep covered because Canadian law protects her religious freedom.
Right. Therefore, Canadian law has another value, and therefore its value system really made the decision differently than the Sharia law made that decision. So it's a very, even if you come to the same decision, it's two methodologies, different methodologies. What I'm trying to point out is a difference in conclusion of behavior, or a difference in conclusion saying, this person can do this, that person has to do something different, does not mean you're actually saying there's two different value systems. It's just that you have one value system, but the system itself incorporates distinctions between individuals. That's why most people understand the difference between Noahide code and the Torah code.
Couldn't you even even among Jews, there's Kohanim and Levim, and they have different rules.
Right, exactly.
Different roles.
Right, and you would not say that's different. Now, it's interesting because this gets into this opens up the whole door to women's rights in Judaism and so forth, where people people who are more critical of halacha would say that Judaism distinguishes between men and women. It's two different value systems in making that decision. I'm reading something about where did I read this now? A province in India that for every 1,000 male births, there's 700 female births.
Right.
And the reason for that is because of gender selection, abortions, and
or murder, newborn baby.
Right. And the argument being is that men are treated differently than women. But the point is that you could say there's a singular value system that values men over women, but the point is that the expression of that value system is we will make decisions differently for this person versus that person in terms of we will have two different value systems. Okay, but the point is that we're seeing the difference between value systems and conclusions. You can have conclusions. You could sit there and say, most people would say there is one value system in the Torah, and the one value system in the Torah makes distinction between Jews and non-Jews, and it's the very fact of the personhood, the Jewish person, that yields that distinction, i.e., being your neshama is distinct or something of that nature, and this is the same way you have with Kohanim and Levim, the fact that there's a distinction between a Kohen and Yisrael. A Kohen who brings a korban positive, he's doing a mitzvah. Yisrael who does it, especially wearing the exact same clothes, gets killed. The point is that one of different possibilities. But the fact is that you're saying that the distinction, we have a value system, but the distinction of the individual is part of that value system, but it's one value system. Okay?
So maybe a clearer example would have been that the police force has to wear a uniform, but if a Sikh is a policeman, he is wearing a turban rather than a that hat.
Right.
We're not talking about safety and wearing a helmet, but we're talking about uniformity of.
Right, and but the point is,
and it's embraced within that if you are Sikh, you can wear a turban.
Right.
I don't think if and when my son becomes a policeman, he will wear a kippah, which may or may not, be noticeable, but he's not going to wear a turban.
Well, the fact is that there are cops in New York who wear kippahs.
Well, my son wears a kippah, and that's what he's doing. But
oh, really? He's a cop. Where?
Not yet.
He's training.
Oh, he's training.
Well, he graduated from Seneca and Police Foundations, and he's applying.
Good. Okay, but the point is that it's one value system, makes distinctions between people and so forth. What? He's.
No, she wished him hatzlacha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. I didn't pass. Great!
And no, you can't go into the army either. With Judaism, could you also sort of look at it not just as different people, but as the Noahide laws being sort of very broad moral laws, and the laws that were given to Jews, if the Jews are supposed to be like Kohanim to the rest of the nations, that there's the idea that some kind of extra spiritual training is required. The way that I sometimes think about it is, I want all kids to be healthy, happy, and moral, but my kids in particular will be told to take a bath right now, brush your teeth, eat your broccoli, no you can't do this, whereas I wouldn't say that to someone else's kids, because I realize that there are other ways of getting to the same ends, but my kids are more my responsibility.
Okay, what you're distinguishing in between is still that, I mean, your distinction is a distinction made by Rabbi Ben Mosek in his book on Rabbi Ben Mosek was a rabbi from the 19th century who was approached by a French individual who wanted to convert to Judaism, a person by the name of Aimé Pellier, and Rabbi Ben Mosek, I'm still reading his book, wrote a book on Judaism and Christianity with some reference to Mohammedanism, but the fact is, it is a very, very informative book. He was a scholar in his own right, but a Makubal and so forth. But in talking to Rabbi Ben Mosek, and in talking to him, you don't have to become a Jew. Jews are like the priests, therefore they have a special standard, and you can be a non-Jew and do your thing that way. And Aimé Pellier became the first real advocate for Noachism. He wrote a book on Noachism and so forth and so forth. So he became.
When was this?
Aimé Pellier, P-A-I-L-E-R-E-I-R-E. He was in the late 1800s, I believe. Maybe made it into 1900s. But he was in France and so on, really pushed Noahism. But the fact is that that distinction is the distinction of officers' corps is different than enlisted men, but it's one value system that makes a distinction based upon the individual. Okay, what I'm getting at now is distinct value systems. Okay, what I mean that is that you're operating now. A value system can have distinctions based upon the person. Okay, what was the example? Like a blind man can go in with his dog to a food store. However, it's still one value system. Okay, the Canadian value system is such it accepts diversity based upon cultural, religious distinctions such as Sikh wearing a turban or whatever. So the distinction because of an individual doesn't mean a different value system. However, what the Canadian system does is accept distinctions in value systems. So as you make your decision pursuant to a value system, Canada accepts it. Okay? That's unique about the Canadian system. Okay. What we have, though, is what I want to deal with is the issue of value systems being distinct, which means that there are two different methodologies for making decisions. Okay? Now, I want to take it to the next step. The first one I said, mostly you understand the Noahide laws, is Noahide laws are distinct for Jews and non-Jews based upon the Jew, and you give an example. The Jew is a Kohen. Another example is that the Jew has a Yiddish neshama and needs difference, and so forth and so forth. Okay, let me take to another example. There's a Gemara that says there's a question of what is theft. Okay. So Noahide laws also prohibit theft, and the Jewish laws prohibit theft. Okay, there is somewhat of a distinction. The Gemara says that a Noahide is responsible for theft of less than a Shabbat Okay, a pruta was the lowest coin in the realm. Okay, when you get married, when a person marries, what the man gives the woman has to be worth the Shabbat pruta. Okay, it has to be at least worth the Shabbat pruta. And the question arises, what?
I like to think so.
Yeah, at least worth about Shabbat pruta. And Shabbat pruta is maybe worth, I don't know how much it's worth today, a nickel, a dime, whatever. Okay, we make sure we make it clear that we bury only if they're only with something worth a nickel. It's very important. However, you should know that Beis Shammai says it has to be with a dinar. It's hey, listen, higher standards for women.
How much is a dinar worth today?
25 cents. I don't know. Anyways, of course,
you feel the increase in value.
We won't get into the whole discussion of what kesef means in terms of marriage. Okay, but the point is on women, is on a Noahide, they're responsible for theft for less than the Shabbat pruta. A Jew is not responsible for theft less than the Shabbat pruta. So if I steal something less than the Shabbat pruta from a Jew, it's not considered to be theft. If I steal less than the Shabbat pruta from if a non-Jew steals less than the Shabbat pruta, it is considered to be theft.
From a Jew or from anyone?
Let's say from non-Jew or from anyone. Let's say for sure for a non-Jew stealing for a non-Jew to commit theft, the non-Jew has to steal. And has to steal anything, even less than the Shabbat pruta. For a Jew to be considered to be guilty of theft, it has to be worth the Shabbat pruta.
From another Jew. What about
and from a non-Jew as well?
From anyone.
I would think that's an interesting question. I would think so. That's why I'm asking. Okay, now here I'm making
100 people and steal less than a pruta from 100 people.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of money.
Okay,
I mean,
wait a
in
second.
theory, that could be done.
The question is, it's an interesting question with no matter who the victim is. However, I just want to focus on this. Why is it the Jewish law defines theft at a Shabbat pruta, and the non-Jewish law says even less than a Shabbat pruta is theft?
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why is that? Now, why don't you say, well, Jews are different than non-Jews? Oh, because we're getting to a situation where that distinction doesn't seem to apply, because we're talking about a concept of this theft, and why should theft be defined differently
for one and
if
the other?
One or the other, what would the fact that Jew or non-Jew make a difference?
I was thinking that there would be the sort of charitable thought process, the concept of if you take from me less than Shabbat pruta, you know what? I'm not even going to notice that you obviously needed it enough.
Very good.
That's the point.
But if that were true, then it should be a non-Jew wouldn't notice either. Like if it's so negligible.
It's not that it's so negligible.
But no, that's just it. It's not.
In my heart that if you already have to stoop to stealing a nickel from me, you know what? You need it more than I do, and I'm not going to even look.
Okay, it's still read that.
Yeah.
Okay, let me point out something too.
All right.
See, you made a very interesting point. Because what you're saying is, here's another example of a distinction between a Jew and a non-Jew. Fact is that there are different arguments given, but one of the arguments given is similar to what you're talking about, which is the union of hakpada, that a Jew is not makbid unless in the Shabbat pruta. It's irrelevant to him.
But what if he's stealing from a non-Jew who might be?
So the fact is that's why stealing from a non-Jew might still be. The fact is though is what we say is with a Jew, there's no hakpada less than the Shabbat. But with non-Jews, there is hakpada. They careful. So that would make it that if you stole from a non-Jew, it might be gezel from the non-Jew, and that gets to the issue of gezel from non-Jews, which is also. The point is that your argument is making a distinction that, so therefore, what about non-Jews develop a charitable heart, and they become the kind of people that say we don't care less than Shabbat Pruta? Then they would be in the same category as well. Mm-hmm. Okay? So really what you're saying is the Gemara is making a sociological statement according to this answer, rather than that, based upon the nature of the people involved, which means that's the same value system. Okay. That's probably good. That's one of the approaches. It's not the only approach. There's other approaches that would yield more problems. But let me now deal with another example. What is the penalty for theft? What is the penalty for theft?
Cut off the eye.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
So the Muslim penalty for theft is you get your hand cut off. Mm-hmm. And in our world, since Muslims are much more civil and so forth, it's actually an amputation under surgery, instead of actually doing it the way they did in Robin Hood.
Oh, I feel so much better now.
Okay, but let's look at this from a serious perspective. What is the penalty for theft under the Noahide Code, and what is the penalty for theft under the Jewish Code?
Jewish Code is according to value of that limb.
Theft.
No,
theft.
Oh, okay.
Theft. We're talking theft. We're not talking about the damages.
Okay, yeah. Fine. So,
what's the penalty for theft?
5 times.
If you steal
if you steal, you return it 5 times.
No, the fact is there are different penalties. If you steal an ox, it's 5 times. You steal a sheep, it's 4 times.
Right.
You steal, there's a difference between Geneva and Gezel. The fact is there's fines, but there's for sure the return of the stolen property.
Yeah.
And usually an extra penalty in that regard. It's a financial penalty.
Right.
You steal, usually have to pay back double. Okay. What's the penalty for theft in the Noahide Code?
Straight restitution, I would think.
Is it just getting the...
There are 7 Noahide laws, right? Mm-hmm. Okay? And we have a rule for all commands of the Noahide laws. Asharasa zuhi misasa. The warning, that's its death sentence. There is one penalty for violating the Noahide laws. It's a death penalty.
Wow.
Now, just to say something about this. Excuse me for a sec.
Yeah, the Muslims are looking good.
What?
The Muslims are looking good now.
Well, the truth is that let's. I can't deal with this now. To go back.
Did those children eat their broccoli today?
Otherwise.
But
Did you know Terry?
okay, so the fact is the statement says Rasa Zuhi Misasa. Now, in that statement, Asarasa Zuhi Misasa, basically could be understood that the penalty for violating a Noahide law is the death penalty. Now, that seems to be the standard understanding of it and so forth. Now, I'm going to make a statement though that I just saw in Rav Henkin. Henkin was one of the Gedolim of the previous generation. Rav Henkin basically seems but my Rebbe did not read Rav Henkin the same way, because I did, and someone else also read it the same way. Someone else actually showed Rav Return actually showed Rav Henkin. He showed me this way, but I think he was right. But Rav Henkin basically says that what was really holds is that I think Rav Henkin really says is that for violation of the Noahide laws, the Noahide courts can even give the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Because why does it say Asherah? It doesn't just say...
Well, Azarasa is the statement of a prohibition. Asarasa Zuni Misasan is prohibition, and is its death statement. So the fact is that's a classical statement in the thing, and that's what the point is that what basically saying is the penalty is under the Noahide Code is the death penalty. So here you have a distinction in penalties between the two systems. Okay? Now, do you want to now, if it's one value system, why is there a distinction in penalties? Let me take it one step further. In order to have a conviction under the Jewish system, what do you need? You need 2 eyewitnesses, and you need hasra, you need a warning, right? You need the acceptance of the warning. Okay, so the point is that the system is 2 eyewitnesses. Under the Noahide code, you don't need 2 witnesses; you just need 1. Okay, and you don't have to warn. The fact is, under the Noahide code, it's not the same idea as ignorance of the law is no excuse, as it is found in the Jewish in the Jewish legal system. Ignorance of the law is an excuse in the Jewish legal system. In the Noahide system, ignorance of the law is not an excuse to a certain extent. Okay, it's not so simple. So the fact is that basically an interesting question of a Gemara in Makot, which talks about the case of what's called Karav Lamezid, okay, which is gross negligence. Okay, so gross negligence is gross negligence really a category of Karav Lamezid? Is it onus or is it mazid, or is it shogeg or is it mazid? This whole discussion in terms of negligent manslaughter in Jewish law. Is gross negligence, what's the penalty for gross negligence? Okay, so the truth is gross negligence in Jewish law, even though we talked about shogeg being negligence, is a case where you have the sent to the Ari Miklot, you're sent to the in exile. But if you're over gross, you see, there are 4. What happens in terms of negligent manslaughter? There's actually 3 categories in Jewish law. One is straight negligence, which is the case of galus. Galus means the Gol Hadam can come after you, and you can go to the Ari Miklot. Okay. Then there's 2 other cases. One other case is called Karav Lamezid, which is gross negligence. The Gol Hadam can still go after you. You can't go to the Ari Miklot though. Okay? Okay? The Gol Hadam is appointed to take care of you, and you have no city of refuge. That's the penalty for gross negligence. So, a wandering man you're going to be. Okay? On the other hand, there is another category which is Karav La'onus or onus, where you are not deemed to be a shogeg, you're considered to be, totally, like unexpected and something you're not really responsible. You don't have to go to the Ari Miklot, and the Gol Hadam doesn't have to kill you. So there's a discussion in this category of Karav Lamezid by a non-Jew as well. Now, under Jewish law, Karav Lamezid is totally not exempt from punishment, except vis-a-vis this case of shogeg, which is a very different case. But in any case where you have premeditated punishment in the Jewish law, Karav Lamezid is off because you have to be a total mazid to get punishment in the Jewish court system, the standard Jewish court system. In the Noahide code, Karav Lamezid is also subject to punishment. Okay, so here I'm giving you some examples of difference in the justice in the Noahide code and the justice in the Torah code. Okay, so tell me the difference now. Up until now, you've tried to keep it as one value system and made distinctions between the people. So you start off with the kasha as well, distinction of the person, but it's one value system. Then I threw out this thing about theft. Well, it's still one value system. They make a distinction because of the people. Okay, let's see how you do this one. Okay, is it one value system or is it 2 value systems?
I think it's one system, but I'm still bothered why they would kill the person for breaking the Noahide law when he's not Jewish. Like, what kind of reasoning is that?
No, the Noahide law applies to non-Jews.
Yeah, I know, but what's the reason that their penalty is death so hard?
That's the part. That's the question. That's the question.
It's a one value system to me in the fact that it's within the value system to have 2 different punishments depending on the people.
But it would seem to be
you're right.
What would seem to be is what it's really creating is 2 value systems. what the Torah really did is create two value systems and say these people are going to be bound by this value system, which has a different definition of justice, which includes one witness and no need for warnings and differences for negligence and the penalty of death. And here's this other value system which has different system or different definition of justice. Okay, because it seems to be not the same definition of justice.
It seems to be, but if you use the seeing eye dog example, then you're back to square one.
But the seeing eye example, I know the difference. It's because of the.
There's a specific of the need of the blind person.
So
and
what are
this
you
helps
saying
the
here?
blind person.
So what are you saying here? So tell me what that specific
There could
need.
be a difference in communities if the Noahide laws would presumably apply to everybody in the world. Perhaps maybe there was a thought if the Jewish community tends to live as communities that there'd be somehow a bit more overseeing what everyone's doing, so it might be okay if you warn somebody.
Okay, let me just say something. That when you talk about Jewish communities, when you talk about the legal system, to really understand this in a theoretical sense, what you're talking about is the state of Israel or the country of the Jews. We won't be political here, but the country of Jews bound by Torah law, and this is the legal system within the Torah law. The Torah says, in your country, right, capital Jerusalem, and your country over there, right, we're just trying to be politically correct in this. The fact is,
it's power.
Right, it's in this country. This is the legal system. Next door, in the other country, we're giving you a different legal system set up for your country.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because I see the Noahide laws as being basically a subset of Jewish laws.
Yes.
In other words, we both have the same laws.
Okay.
It's just the consequences are different for the subsets of people.
Okay, so the fact is, what I'm basically
Which is disturbing in itself.
Yes, that's true.
So what I am presenting to you, and what I'm trying to bring you along, is the fact that there are two different value systems. Okay? Okay? Ramosha makes this statement very powerfully vis-a-vis the case of euthanasia. Okay, even though he says in one place and then he brings up the issue in another place where he changes his opinion on this, says this is wrong. But his argument is a very interesting argument. He says to understand the Noahide laws, you have to read the laws that apply to the Noahides. If you have to understand the Torah laws, you have to read the laws as presented to Noahides. So he says, for example, to Jews. Okay. So he says an example like this. He says he's bothered by the case of Hananiah ben Trajan. Hananiah ben Trajan. Okay, Hananiah ben Trajan was one of the Asara Kuri Malchus, one of the 10 people who were tortured to death by the Romans. What happened with him is he was wrapped in the Sefer Torah, or he was wrapped in Sefer Torah, wrapped in sponges to keep his body wet, keep his body wet, and then burned at and then set on fire. What happens is this case is a classic source for the issur of euthanasia. Okay? What happens is he's obviously dying, he's in tremendous pain. His Talmidim see this and say, Rabbi, open your mouth so the flames can go inside you. And he says, no, I can't hasten my death whatsoever. It's Kodesh Baruch Hu, he makes the decision. Fine. The executioner is so in awe of Hananiah ben Trajan, and he looks at Hananiah ben Trajan and he says, I'm totally in awe of you. Listen, I accept.
How is this conversation while the guy's burning?
What? No, he says, I'm totally in awe of you. I make a deal with you. I'll fan the flame and remove the sponges if you promise that you'll take me into Olam Haba. Okay? Okay? He says, it's a deal. Okay? Do it. Okay? So the executioner, a non-Jew, basically takes away the sponges, fans the flame, and then jumps in himself, committing suicide. So the question exists is that, and the Chani ben Tradian is promised in all the world. So the question is that, wait a second, how is it okay for the executioner to commit euthanasia? Was it okay for Chani ben Tradian not to do it? It's a real problem. So the fact is that the issue with that is, I mean, part of that issue is well, how do you know the executioner got Olam Haba? Maybe Chanani ben Tradian faked him out. And the question was, could he really fake him out or not fake him out? In the enforcement. The truth of the Gemara goes on and says that Rav Yochanan is married to Eliyahu. The Baskol came out and said, both the executioner, both Rabbi Chanani ben Tradian and the executioner are both Kana Olam Haba. And Yochanan says, Yesh Kana Olam Haba and Yesh Kana Olam Haba only after their whole life. But the execution was Kana Olam Haba in a minute. So it seems to be that it was okay.
He committed suicide, though. Asur. No.
Right, exactly. He
He's not Jewish.
Wait a second.
Okay, hello.
Euthanasia. So how is he able to do it?
But who's getting the euthanasia here? Is it Rabbi Hananya ben Tradian as a result?
So how can he do it?
Yeah.
How can he do it? Right? So I'll just tell you what Moshe says. Okay, there's different approaches, different answers to this, and so forth and so forth. It's a whole long readless in itself. Moshe says maybe euthanasia is not also for a non-Jew. Maybe euthanasia is only also for Jews, not for non-Jews. Why? Because the source of the prohibition of murder for Jews is the Yisrael lo tzirtzach in the Yisrael Sadibrot. Don't murder in the Ten Commandments. What's the source for the Yisrael of murder for Noachites? It's a pasuk that says Shachvat dam ha'adam ba'adam yimad. The fact is someone who spills blood, you're supposed to right. So the fact is that verse says if you spill blood. So Moshe says maybe for Noachites the only thing that's usher is if you actually do a violent death. Okay? And therefore a death that's done with permission of the one being killed may not be usher for Noachites. Not only that, maybe it's a mitzvah because you see this guy helps out Chani ben Tradian. Moshe rejects his opinion in another tshuva. He threw out that opinion, and then somewhere else he withdraws that opinion. But the fact is,
what's the time difference between the giving and the withdrawal of the
I didn't see. By the way, in his opinion, he says ulai. He says ulai.
Okay.
He says ulai. He's not expecting anyone to fall through. He says ulai. But the point is the reason I'm bringing this down is where Moshe basically says, we got two value systems, two stated statutes. For Jews, they got this statute, lo tirtzach. For non-Jews, you got this statute. Okay? And there can be distinctions between them. And there are numerous distinctions between them. Gezel is one. Abortion is another. It's a whole big problem with even permitting abortion in the case of the mother's life being in danger for a Noachite. The truth of the matter is, unfortunately, the answer yes, it is possible, but there's a difference. But there is a question of why is it okay for a Noachite to have abortions if the mother's life is in danger. And the fact is, according to some Shittas, the difference in abortion laws between Jews and non-Jews is major. For non-Jews, it clearly would be only if the mother's life is in danger.
Yeah, but the Catholics don't see it that way.
No, but we're not interested in Catholics right now.
Yeah.
We're talking Noachide laws.
Okay.
Okay. But for Jews, there are Shittas that hold you can abort for
psychological
psychological is still you're arguing that it still is that's a difference. The psychological is still a question of it being an issue of mother's life. The question there are Shittas who hold that you can abort for mother for health. So, for example, the classic example is diabetes as a result of pregnancy, and the concern that the mother may go blind if she goes full term.
Right.
Can you abort to prevent the mother from going blind?
What about child if you know somebody's going to be?
That's another argument. The fact is,
there any that
so what's the Eliezer held that you can abort up to a certain time for Tay-Sex or something like that. The fact of the matter is that's all within the Torah. That's all within the Torah system. That's not even considerable within the Noahide system, because you're talking two different value systems.
Can you, I know it's complicated, but can you try and explain the logic in giving such a different value system for that? Like because I would think that
He's waiting for you to ask the question. Good segue.
Didn't you have to leave?
What?
Didn't you have to leave? Okay, so we're just going to...
question?
No,
No,
because I was going to ask that question.
That's what we're doing here. But the fact is that I'm sitting here now twiddling my thumbs and don't you have to leave? I mean, I got you now. You want the answer. You're on your...
You can't leave. You are now tied here.
Okay.
He's been waiting for this
Tired,
moment.
so I thought maybe I missed what everybody was talking about.
No, but that's exactly it. That's exactly it. The question is what I've done is I use the Noahide system, present to you that what you have here is two value systems. And that introduces the idea of how do you have two value systems and how do you understand the concept of Tov and Ra. Okay? Really, when you come down to Tov and Ra, a value system says it makes a distinction between Tov and Ra. So how do you have this distinction of two value systems? Okay, so the question, what we really have to do is define what is the value system and understand why you have distinct value systems and what really is the yardstick of these distinct value systems. Okay. And I'm just using the Noahide as an example, but the fact is that this changes the outlook of how you understand good and evil and Tov and Ra. Okay, most people perceive good and evil to be the little devil and the little angel on the two shoulders in the cartoons, right? Mm-hmm. Right? And it's pretty obvious what's the good thing to do and what's the evil thing to do, right? It's pretty obvious. That's a very simplistic way of understanding good and evil. It's a very, not only simplistic, but it really misrepresents what's really going on. See, because if you ask anyone in the world, think anyone in the world who you consider to be the prototype of evil, and ask that person if they really are an evil person, what do you think you will hear? Well, there are certain people who might say, yeah, I'm evil, I don't care. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that's what I'm into, and so on. You know, I mean, it's not necessarily evil also, but the fact is that there are certain people who would admit to being evil, right? You know, Saddam Hussein's son basically was, I don't care if I'm evil, I just want to do whatever, I just want to do what I want. Fact is, though, is most people who did evil, especially the ones who did the most evil in history, all thought they were doing
the right thing.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
It's like perverted values.
So the question is, so if you want to take some names, you can take Hitler Yimach, take Stalin Yimach, take Torquemada, take Osama bin Laden. Okay? Think about it. Osama bin Laden thought he was doing
good. Yeah. Bettering the world.
Bettering the world. Hitler Yimach the reason he's such a problematic figure is because he and when I say problematic figure is that people don't like to hear that he was a vegetarian. People don't like to hear that he married what's her name, last minute. So we want to hear this guy's into raping and looting and the truth is that these guys, a lot of these guys, Stalin was himself, he thought he was doing good things. Okay, Torquemada was a Catholic priest, right? And he was a very devout Catholic priest. What was Torquemada's real issue? Everyone said, he was an anti-Semite, he hated Jews. What was Torquemada's real reason for the expelling of Jews from Spain? It wasn't just the Jews he expelled. Who did he also expel?
The Muslims.
That's right.
Anyone who wouldn't convert.
Why?
Jesus Christ.
Because
Why?
They were all going to hell at the time.
No, wait a second. What?
The purity of
Yes!
Catholic,
Yes! I want to have a society where the people in the society don't have any negative influences. Now, wait a second. Do we not make similar decisions? Okay? Do we think...
Scandalize, we make our schools, we bring our shows.
And is that necessarily wrong? Well, wait a second. Okay? Now the point is don't get me wrong, I'm not in any way saying something good about Torquemada. But the fact is that the greatest evil that has done in history is done by people who think they are doing good. Extremely important. So really what your understanding is that this little presentation of the cartoon of the little devil and the little angel, everyone knows, oh, it's a little devil making evil and the little good. The fact of the matter is that really what it comes down to is that you are confronting, or you have this idea that the person who's really doing evil really think they are doing something good. Now, why would they think that? Where do they get these ideas from? And really what happens is their methodology of making decisions is misguided or incorrect. Okay. So the point is what it really comes down to is your value system. And this is what's key about value systems. See, what happens is the choices we have to make in life, when we're talking about Tov and Ra, to think that our choices are good and evil in the simplistic sense is totally incorrect. Usually what it is a choice of one value against another value. Okay? Yeah. And the question is, which value should have priority? That's really the question.
Often so what you're choosing the best of the worst choices.
But it's the same thing. It's usually not saying I'm choosing A. It's usually saying, hey, it's this value against that value, and you're usually choosing which value you should choose at the expense of the other.
Right.
Yaakov Avinu with Esav, he knows it's a value. The value of total presentation of honesty versus the clarity of the situation. He has to balance it out. He's not sure what to do. Rivka says, well, I think this value. But even in the end, Yaakov knows that there's a consequence. It's not just simply, perfectly black and white, and perfect white choosing. It's that I have the two values, and there are consequences. I'm going to choose A. Okay, Esther. I'm going to go into Achashverosh. There's a consequence. I lose Mordechai. Right? The point is that and the fact is those values. And what you have is other people disagreeing with them. So the Meforshim say who were very angry with Mordechai sending Esther into Achashverosh, to basically, have a romantic liaison with Achashverosh. Says they should have figured another way to do it. But I'm saving Klal Yisrael. Yeah, but it wasn't the right way. The fact is that what you have is a balance between values. Okay? Now, that's another question. That's exactly it. The point is that it's always a matter of balancing between values. Okay? Now, once you look at it that way, you begin to understand, so what exactly is the yardstick? How do you make a decision between values? So the point is you have the battle between the two values, then you have the yardstick of making the decision between those two values. So how do I know that A should override B in this case, or B should override A in that case? And that's a distinction between value systems. See, what happens is that when I present different value systems, in terms of, or let me say different value systems. Let me present what I think is the definition of Tov and Ra. For example, Ra is individual values operating in a vacuum. When you let whatever the dominant value that you have overriding you in your head overtake you, that is a reflection of Ra in its raw form. Okay, it is a value without recognition of its place in the greater value complexity, greater complex world. In other words, you have a value. Let's say you have a value of tzedakah, of charity, but you take no. So you see someone on the street asking you for tzedakah, and you give it to them. Okay, just basically in the total narrow definitions of that idea, you've taken no consideration about whether this person really is deserving of tzedakah. You've taken no consideration of what are the priorities in the tzedakah system. Is this person who's in front of you right now really the priority of crying? Heck, he's crying. He's crying because he needs a new Lamborghini, because his old Lamborghini going out. And a quote to the halacha that says, "Hey, listen, I used to own a Lamborghini," and the halacha says, "It's tzedakah if you give me a Lamborghini. I want a Lamborghini." He says, and you're crying so well, and so forth, so on. I am so affected by it, and so forth, and so forth. And you don't think back and say, "Listen, mister, I got $1 here. It's not going to get you a Lamborghini, but it could get that guy over there a piece of bread, and that person could really use it." So it's a matter, and this is where seichel comes in terms of Tov being connected to the mind. But if you look at the Tov, you look at the Maral in his statement of Tov. There's a Rashi that says that on Yom Sheni, Kodesh Baruch didn't say that V'yarashem ki Tov because there was a split of the Rakia, but Tov, Maral points out that Tov is a definition of completeness. It's a definition of whole. When you make a decision in the context of the full understanding of the situation, that's Tov. Okay, when you take in the whole, you might still make the Tov decision with your emotion just by itself, but the fact is the concern is making decisions in the moment of the emotions. That's the definition of Tov. So the point is Ra is the conflicting of those values. All those values and things which you're going to feel emotional about and so on and so on. Tov is using your head to make the decision of which value really should have priority. Sometimes in line with the emotion, sometimes not in line with the emotion. But the fact is, that's really it. And then the question is, what's the yardstick? So now we can go. Now I'll tell you that the yardstick that we're using over here is the Noachide system, and the Torah system has two different yardsticks. Okay? We're going to get to your answer. Okay? The Noachide system, and you still have time to leave. Okay. The yardstick system, the Noachide system has one yardstick: law and order. Okay? Its yardstick is societal law and order. The decisions made are to maintain societal order. Now we have a similar system within a Jewish country as well. That's the Beis Din HaMelech. It's also emergency powers in the courts, where a person gets off on a technicality, the court could still throw him into jail or do some other things. Beis Din HaMelech had no rules on a certain level, right? That's why if you look at the story of Shlomo Melech with the mother saying, he says, split the baby in half. If you think about it, wait a sec. How's that fair?
How does he even get to decree such a thing?
Because he is the king. And the Beis Din HaMelech had that power. Okay? Because the Beis Din HaMelech makes a decision based upon law and order. What's necessary for law and order in the society, which includes justice from the perspective of law and order.
But what does law and order have to do with not letting a woman having an abortion because of life and everything? Where does that come into law and order?
The fact is that what that gets into is the idea of societal structure.
But don't they deserve Rahmanut also?
The fact is that by the way, that's why a mother's life, it can most likely under Noachide code would be you can abort for that reason as well, right? They get into the question of life being primary value within the law and order society, okay? But in the Torah society, the Torah laws with having two witnesses and that, the concern is not law and order. Concern is individual justice. See, within the Torah system, the definition of punishing someone is a din of Russia. Not Russia, right? But the fact is that in the Torah system, you're basically saying you are a Russia, you deserve this punishment. Okay? In ben hakos a Russia.
Why can't individual justice be applied to non-Jew also, according to
You can, but the fact is that overall, in any justice system, so you take the example of illegal evidence, okay, in the States. It's a good example of it. The decision was made that the Miranda laws and stuff like that. If you don't if you legally seize evidence, that evidence is that no, it's not that way here. It's not that way here. My understanding here from my ideas.
Cops we're now
yeah, you can sue the cops who do it, but the evidence is still admitted.
It's an individual decision
Right.
Okay.
of the judge.
The fact is I remember my own the way I was taught many years ago, and might have changed since then. But the difference between Canadian law and American law was that in America, the evidence was unacceptable. In Canadian law, the evidence is acceptable, but you can sue the living dead outside of the cops who did it for breach of your own privacy and so forth.
Okay, from what I understand, they throw the evidence out.
Okay, okay, but the point is that
anything that bad.
Okay, so what are you waiting out for? Okay.
Yeah.
The fact is that that's part of the balance here. But the point is, you're making decisions in terms of society versus individual, and I'm not getting into comparison between this system, that system, and so forth. But the fact is that this is a good example of a different value system, in the sense that what you're getting at here is the sense that first level is it's not good and evil, right? It's a balance between two positive considerations. And how do you balance it out? And then you have this yardstick, which is what the value system is in making those decisions. And that yardstick may be different in different circumstances. So you have a yardstick of one value system, which says one situation, and another value system. But the point is that and the differences between countries, just say between Canada and the United States, might be the two countries have differing value systems on this issue, because they know the value conflict, they know the issue involved, based upon their own perception of what should be the underlying yardstick to make that decision. So the point is what I'm pointing out is that we have it within the Torah realm, in the sense that there's a difference between the decisions rendered under the Noahide code and decisions rendered under the Torah code. And a lot of the differences with the Noahide code we find already in the Torah system itself, in the sense that we have two justice systems in the Torah system. One is the Beis Din HaMelech, the king's court, and one is the regular Sanhedrin Beis Din, which had two different votes. And the reason for that, from my understanding, is two different yardsticks for making decisions. The Sanhedrin much more interested in the necessity of defining individual justice, right? Now, the Sanhedrin also had an emergency power for societal need. The Beis Din HaMelech did with societal need. The Rambam, for example, mentions by the emergency power of the Sanhedrin that when it came down to ritual law, such as Shabbos or Kashrus, you got off in a technicality. You walked. You just walked. Okay? There's a difference of how this would work in terms of, let's say, murder or theft, but the Rambam says that the emergency power of the courts, right, would kick in what's necessary to maintain societal order. So if you got off on a technicality on the theft or on a murder, you wouldn't necessarily walk. Okay? But Beis Din HaMelech, for sure you would face the punishment. And then the punishment would be, listen, it's not so much like the same problems exist in our world for today. For example, we always had this big problem where when you have issues of guilt and innocence, we can never know 100% whether someone's guilty or innocent. That's why you have all these cases now with DNA and so on and so forth. But if we say bits unless we have two eyewitnesses, it's not going to work. It was nice seeing you.
I'm really sorry I have to run, and I only came because it was yours, and it was really worth it.
Thank you.
And it's so good to see you again.
Regards, please.
And I'm really tired. I think I forgot to put something in there. I just taken it back for a second.
Thank you.
How long is she here?
Two next
Okay.
Sunday.
That is it.
It was.
Oh, so it's been used already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want some more?
I'm fine, thank you. Okay, so, anyways, breaking the action here for a little interlude here. Okay, should have told you guys beforehand so you can go get something from the refrigerator, but too bad. Back on it. Okay, so, but they can always put it on pause anyways. Right? Okay, so that's just okay. So the fact is that that's an example of different value systems. The point is once you look at it like that, the question is how do you relate to other different value systems? I point to the different value systems within Torah. The fact is, once you look at values this way, you begin to understand that the difference between, let's say, in terms of a lot of things, Elu and things like that, is differing value systems within Torah because of the flexibility within Torah, because of Elu. Okay, which is not necessarily a bad thing because it actually opens up the greater depth of dealing with issues. So the more you have a disagreement over issues, the more you're able to see that there is different agreements about the yardsticks involved also. Okay, so that's a lot of the issues. Interesting. Not a Torah left, I can quote Rav Henkin. The fact is that although I'll get it from you anyways, but no, the truth is that no. Rav Henkin actually points out something, for example, that he argues that the reason Yaakov, he makes an idea, the reason Yaakov had a difficulty with with revealing the Kates, the end of days, to the brothers, is the values that were to exist at the end of days was not the value structure that would be applied to the brothers. In other words, what Yaakov was going to do was introduce something about the end of days and the values of and a presentation of values that should exist at the end of days. The point is the value structure that he believed should exist in the end of days was not the value structure that exists for the brothers. And his argument is that for the brothers they had to be much more militant. They had to fight. They had to fight for Torah. They had to fight against Avodah Zarah. They had to be. So the Jews, in this period, he calls it the 2,000 years of Torah. They had to fight for Torah against Avodah Zarah. The idea that there's 6,000 years. First 2,000 is considered to be tohu vavohu, it's all chaos. Second 2,000 is Torah. The latter 2,000 is Moshe Mashiach, which means Mashiach can come any time. But he says the difference is the 2,000 years of Torah is the 2,000 years of the fight. Fight against Avodah Zarah, against idolatry, and so forth. The last 2,000 years are the 2,000 years of Bias Mashiach. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
And sorry, thank you. But nice to see you. I'm happy. I'm glad you came. But the last 2,000 years, he says, is Bias Mashiach, and he says, in Bias Mashiach is a time of peace. So he says that Yaakov should not take this idea of ideas that should really be applicable for peace and for some aspect of being peaceful, the Jews should be peaceful, and take those ideas and apply it to a militant era. Now, if you read Rav Henkin, he actually seems to imply that this is the idea of what should dominate Jewish thought. We shouldn't be militarily powerful. He didn't really say that. He says we shouldn't be. It seems to explain a lot of the attitudes of Jewish thought in Europe, that we should be more interested in passive resistance, like Gandhi, not become militaristic. Now the truth is that my Rabbi told me that he actually spoke to Rav Henkin once about this, and Rav Henkin said in Europe everyone believes you shouldn't go up there and conquer. I mean that's the Gemara, but he says except for some people have different ways of reading the Gemara, but the general, like they say by the Satmar Rav, that the Satmar Rav everyone was upset about. He says I don't get it. Back in Europe, everyone agreed with me. The only thing that happened is everyone changed their mind. I just stayed the same. And he says, "Well, what is everyone upset with me? I didn't change." So the fact is that Rav Henkin says, but the argument, I heard this from Rav Yaakov, or from Yaakov Kamenetsky, and Rav Henkin seems to say, now that we have the land, we of course have to defend it. Okay, and he told the Rabbi, and he lived in Eretz Yisrael, and he says, now we have it, we have to defend it. But the fact is that when he wrote this article, he wrote it in the 50s, he was arguing that it was almost like Jews should be like Gandhi, passive Gandhi resistance type people. Right, right. But the interesting thing about it is that's why he said that Yaakov couldn't reveal the Kates, the Achros Yamim, to to the brothers, because at the time of the brothers, that wasn't the system. The system was to be much more in a fight against the Avodah Zarah. But the point is, is that it tells you that there are different yardsticks for measuring the value conflicts in different situations. So there are value systems. I pointed out the value system of Torah versus Noachide code. I'm telling you there's value systems in terms of justice between the Ben Noach between the Bez and the Melech and this and so forth, and this is and we also see this a little bit in the value system applied in halachic systems. So the question there is how do we relate to other value systems? So there is one other value system I just want to touch upon, and that's the difference between natural morality and revelational morality. Okay, the idea is whether it's B'pi HaSeichel or B'pi HaShmua. Okay, B'pi HaShmua means it's prophetic, B'pi HaSeichel means it's rational. Okay, and this also creates two value systems. You have a value system that comes out of rational thought, and there's a value system that comes out of B'pi HaShmua. And the question is, how do we relate in the fact of having these two different value systems within us, because we all have natural morality within ourselves, and then we confront the Torah. Now, the most famous presentation of this is, of course, the Rambam, in terms of making a difference between the Chukim and the Mishpatim. The Chukim are B'pi HaShmua. They're revelational. We do them because God tells us to do it. That's it. Okay. Then he says there's rational mitzvahs B'pi HaSeichel. And he says the distinction is B'pi HaSeichel, you're supposed to feel that they're wrong to do, and that's why we don't do it. So it's not like, gee, I'd really like to kill you, but Kodesh Baruch Hu says no. Which he says that you're supposed to do with pork. You're supposed to, gee, I'm sure that Big Mac looks really good. I'm sure it tastes really good. What can I do? God tells me not to do it, but not that I have an emotional feeling that that's a bad thing to do. But with murder, I'm supposed to feel is bad. Basically, this would be B'pi HaSeichel, natural morality, and revelational morality. Okay, so they're really two different distinctive systems. Now, the fact is that that has a certain aspect of our challenge in those ideas. In a certain way, is how do we relate to that distinction? In a certain way, Hanukkah was perceived as somewhat of that battle. The Greeks were rationalists and said, hey, listen, you look at it, and you look in terms of issues of circumcision. And they said, Bris Milah basically said, what are you doing? Right? Natural morality, that's the wrong thing to do. Okay? But the revelational morality is it's the right thing to do. So there's an example of a conflict. So how do we deal with such conflicts? Okay. So the point is that this is part of this is part of a battle that we have when we relate to the outside world. In the context of a Torquemada, for example, you're not dealing with a battle with another value system that's natural. It was another definition of a revelational value system. That is one I can simply reject. Right? I can sit there and say, listen, you say this is revelation, I say it's not, I don't have to deal with it. Now the truth is that the Catholic moral system had some Torah revelational aspects to it as well. Made it more complex in terms of dealing with it, this Judeo-Christian concept and so forth and so forth. But basically, when they argue a revelational argument, that argument is an argument I can dismiss. I don't have to deal with it. Then it comes up to be just a practical issue of how I relate to this other system, because I got to relate to it. But the point is, I don't have to give it any validity. When we get into the issue of a natural morality, then we have more issue, because the halacha does see a value in natural morality, and the question emerges as though it seems that we all have this distinct value system, these two value systems within ourselves: a natural morality and a revelational morality that we're supposed to work with. We're supposed to actually have a natural morality. There's a trend among some from world to try and negate natural morality. Say we're only supposed to work with the revelational morality. We're not supposed to have this natural morality. Okay, there is some semblance of that argument within the Jewish world. However, the fact is that how you deal with that natural morality is difficult. The Rav argued that the natural morality is, he argues the natural morality is imprecise. So he says natural morality does not give answers when it becomes real tough issues. Revelation has to be given over when you have to sort of have the real tough decisions. You can't make decisions from natural morality at all. And he bases it upon Tzaddik. The Rav Aaron Lichtenstein has a whole argument of natural morality being where we go for Lifnim Mishur Sadin. Okay? What I believe very strongly is that natural morality and revelational morality is important for us to have, because that creates the dialectic for truly us to understand those value systems. Okay? So the point is if you look at the halachic system, it's when you have a statement in the halacha, you think that this is the halacha, and you sort of feel that there's something inside you that says, gee, that doesn't sound right, then that has initiated a lot of halachic analysis. Sometimes back and forth. So I believe that there's a dialectic that emerges from the fact that we have two value systems within ourselves. One is within ourselves, our natural morality system, and the other one is the fact of the revelational system. We're constantly working the revelational system. Revelational system is primary, takes authority over it, but the fact is we are supposed to ask those questions. And the fact that we have a natural morality system within ourselves creates a sense of a possibility for us to ask questions. And we also are supposed to feel that conflict. Now, this is examples. Example is the situation with the guna, for example, in the sense that a guna is supposed to say, here's the halacha, this is the correct decision according to revelational morality. You're supposed to feel sick about this decision because this woman should really get married, right? So therefore, you are supposed to feel in conflict. And you see this from certain poskim. I mean, throughout history, people have said, hey, I always found the heter to be, one of the great things is I was mater naguna. But the point is that you went back to the revelational system to find the heter, but you didn't just say, hey, my natural morality takes over. But the fact is that the halacha basically says, recognize that natural morality pushes you to strive to this, and you have natural morality to this. So the truth is you get this, the fact is we live with variant moral systems and value systems. And I think it really comes down to the fact that our whole view of values is different. It's not good versus evil. It's the fact that there's a conflict of different values, and we have to make the right decisions of which values should have priority. It means we have to figure out what the yardstick is, and we have to use the correct yardstick for the circumstance, and that itself creates issues and so forth and so forth. But when we confront a person who's making a different decision, applying this, seeing this world the same way, and says, hey, but my yardstick says A versus B, then there's ways of relating to them. There's certain yardsticks which we totally dismiss, and there's certain yardsticks where we say, gee, okay, we are in disagreement, but I understand your yardstick versus my yardstick, and so forth. But the fact is really what you begin to understand is that the problem with a Stalin and a Hitler is that the yardsticks have no validity whatsoever. They're totally lacking, what I think is lacking tov. Okay, and that's the balancing act. The fact is that tov is a recognition of the overall perspective. And if you look at, say, someone like Hitler, it was one value totally dominating at the expense of every other value. And that usually is what ultimate ra comes from. A person who takes a value, like I think Hitler had a nationalistic value. There's a place for nationalistic value within Jewish concept. Okay, yeah,
and he got the trains running one time.
Right.
He got
the point is that he totally ignored every other value. Right. Okay, and that's really same with Stalin and same with everything like that. Real ra, what real ra comes from is if you understand it's not an evil drive, you understand it's a value that's overextended, and the reason it's overextended is because Tov is not truly understood, because what Tov does is make you think and understand. You can't just go with your emotion, you have to use your head, and you have to see the balance of those things. And that's really what Tov is about. understanding the complexity and the thing. And I think real Tov comes from an idea of understanding that yeah, I have to choose A. Yeah, there's going to be a cost, but A is still more important, and so forth.
But you also have to have that basic value that every human being has a value, and I think that's where these people, because Stalin said, I don't want the people in here to starve, but all those people, like in group, I have to protect.
Right, and that's exactly it, because that's exactly it. He didn't have the total value perception, which is something where you have to understand that there's a whole realm of values, and we are supposed to be conscious of the whole realm of values. Even as Meg said, the truth is, it's much harder to make decisions that way. Because if you understand that with every decision you make, there's 45 values in this decision, and in balance of probability, and with this there's going to be consequences that are somewhat problematic. It's very, very difficult to make decisions. But the fact is, that's what ultimately Tov is. But the fact is, what different value systems are is different yardsticks of how we make that evaluation. And we see in the Jewish world that there actually is a recognition of different yardsticks.